This week we're talking about our first 30 and our last 30, meaning the first 30 minutes of our day and the last 30 minutes of our day. Last week we were talking about our goals and aspirations, our dreams, and we were talking about little things that we could implement immediately and repeatedly to help us achieve those goals. And I think this is a great process to look at is what are we doing with the first 30 minutes of our day, starting our day, and the last 30 minutes as we end our day, because really that cumulative hour sets up the other 23 hours of our day. So first, I want my students this week considering their morning routines. It's very easy for everyone to just sort of go through the day on inertia, to just sort of go through the motions. And it's really an important thing to set a tone for our day. It's sort of that attack or be attacked mentality. That either I'm going to let the day happen to me or I'm going to get what I want out of the day. So for the first 30 minutes, I want everyone to consider what do you typically do those first 30 minutes of the day. I know that I try to have a routine. And sometimes it varies a little bit. But typically in the morning, I'll wake up. I'm pretty much always up early, and my entire morning might change a little bit depending on whether I'm going to the high school weight room to work with our athletes, whether I'm getting in a longer workout myself, whether I have my kids in the morning, so we're going through their morning process as well. But I have specific times that I set my alarm for, and I leave a little variation. I give myself a little bit of leeway depending on what I have going on in the morning, whether I am going into the high school weight room or working out myself or whatever that might be. But I'm typically up around 5 in the morning, and I get out of bed, and the first thing I do is make my bed. Now, it's nothing fancy. I'm not making my bed like I'm at the Hilton, but I'm basically just pulling my sheets back and straightening things out. And I think that's a great first step to the day because it's accomplishing something right away. It's something simple, relatively menial, but it's something done, and it feeds into the last 30 minutes of the day too, when I've finished everything for the day and I'm coming into a made bed. The next thing I try to do is I have a notebook at the side of my bed that has different goals and things that I want to focus on. Might even be just sort of abstract concepts that I want to focus on. But I read those notes that I have by my bed, and I occasionally change those and update those. A lot of times I'll do like 30 days worth. Here's some things I want to focus on for the next 30 days, and I'll try to look at that first thing in the morning just to remind myself of what I'm really focusing on, what I really want. Then I typically go into my living room where I either have my yoga mat already sitting out from the night before or I throw out a yoga mat, and I start by doing a breathing process and meditation process. So I sit cross-legged on the floor. I go through the Wim Hof breathing process, and as I'm breathing, I kind of go through cycles of meditation. So for the initial cycles of breath, I'm trying to just clear my mind, clear everything else out. I'm not worrying about the day at this point. I'm just sort of removing myself from all the chaos and madness of the day, of the busy schedule, or maybe the monotony of the repeated tasks of day-to-day life. And I remove myself from all of that. And I try to just spend a little time just separating a little bit. And I try to even visualize that I'm either sort of the eye of a hurricane, sort of where everything in life is sort of swirling around me, but I'm just going to be the calm in the center. Or maybe I'm the light in the darkness where I'm showing through the things that I want to do regardless of what's happening around me. Then through the next cycle of breath, I basically get into a mantra where I repeat my 5 core tenets, my 5 core beliefs, which are courage, integrity, respect, love, and empathy. And with each breath, I try to consider one of those tenets, and I go through cycles of 5 breaths a few times, considering those and trying to feel those and picture what those things mean if I'm living those out. The next thing I try to do through the next cycle of breathing is think of things for which I am grateful. That's another great way to start off the day, is to consider the things for which we are grateful. It's easy to get negative about things or to focus on the challenges we have in day-to-day life. So I think it's important to start the day with gratitude, and that gives some perspective for the rest of the day. Then finally, as I'm breathing, I try to set my intention for the day. I try to think about the things that I have going on that day and what I want to accomplish that day, and then I finish up my breathing and I go into a yoga routine. And that's longer or shorter depending on other workout stuff I might be doing, but then I try to do some yoga just as a general health type of thing. And I think it's important just to get the blood flowing and do something active. There'd be some mornings where that might be the only exercise I'm doing to start the day, and then I'm going off to the next thing. And other times that's leading into a longer workout or something like that. But those are kind of the things I like to keep as the staples of my morning routine. From there, things vary a little bit. If I'm going to the high school weight room, I'm just grabbing my clothes and my food that I set out and prepared the night before, so I can just grab them and pack up and get ready to go. Like I said, if I have a workout, then I go and work out. I've got an at-home gym, so I'll do that, or I'll go run outside, or whatever it might be. And then I go about my day. But I'm starting the day in an intentional way. I'm not just rolling out of bed and having to rush off to the next thing. And I think that's important for setting up everything else I do during the day. Then on the flip side of that, at nighttime, I try to set aside time so I can close out my day. And I think that's a really important thing to do as well. A lot of times we get to the end of the day and we're maybe tired and we've got a bunch of stuff to do for students. You've maybe had extracurriculars and you've got homework and it's been a long day, and we kind of just crash or fizzle out, and we're not giving ourselves a chance to reflect on the day and close the day on our terms. Even if you've had to do all of these things throughout the day, it's nice to close the day on our own terms. So I try to do that. And I will say that is when I fail with the first 30 and last 30, it's really with that closing the day. Because I'll do the same thing that a lot of my students do, where maybe they're drifting off while they're working on homework, or they just crash when they get home from an event, or they're tired and they turn on Netflix or something like that and kind of doze off. I'll do that. I'll have the occasion where I'll get home, I'll get done with everything, get my kids to bed, those sorts of things, and then maybe I sit down to watch football film this time of year, and then I'll find myself asleep on the couch, and I wake up at 3 in the morning with my contacts still in, and I just slog into bed. Or, I've had times where I'm writing something, I'm sitting at my laptop just writing, and I'll fall asleep and then wake up and I've got like 3 pages of the letter L or something. So that's something I'm continually working on, but in an ideal setting, what I like to do is, after I get my kids to bed or finish all the things that I have to do, I try to set aside 30 minutes to tidy up the house a little bit, put any dishes away or clean the last few dishes, wipe down the counter in the kitchen, those sorts of things. Maybe sweep, whatever. It doesn't really take that long, but set aside a few minutes to just sort of tidy up around the house. Because, again, that's nice for setting up the next day. Wake up and the house is in order, those sorts of things. And I think it's important to literally keep one's house in order if you want to figuratively keep your house in order in terms of just having your life the way that you want it to be. So I try to tidy up a little bit. I try to consider whatever I've got going on next day. I've got a couple calendars up on the fridge, and then on a whiteboard I've kind of planned out 2 weeks at a time what I've got day to day. So I look at that, maybe even put another note or two on there about something I got to attend to the next day. And I try to just get everything settled, and a lot of times I'll prep my food for the next day, so it's not something I'm doing in the morning. I've got my food ready and I can grab it. Especially if I'm going into the weight room in the morning, I'll have my clothes out and folded in a bag ready to go, so I can just grab them and go in the morning. So I try to set those things up to have success the next day. And then I like to allow myself a little bit of time to typically do yoga again at night before I go to bed, just to decompress and sort of let go of everything else from the day and be able to go off to bed feeling pretty good physically and mentally. Now, those are just examples of my morning and evening routine. And like I said, I fail at them sometimes, or I deviate a little bit and do different things. But I think it's important to try to have routines. If we're just kind of letting everything happen to us, we're not dictating, we're reacting. And I want my students to dictate what happens in their day, at least to the extent that they're able. So for this week, that's what I want, is I want you to tell me about your first 30 and your last 30. What do you do typically in the morning, right when you get up, and right before you go to bed? And then I want you to tell me if that first 30 and last 30 are really feeding your dreams and goals. If they're not, I'd like you to tell me what are some things you could do to tweak your first 30 and last 30 to maybe feed more into your dreams and aspirations. Thank you. Much love.